Hello and welcome to Driven by Doing podcast. Today we have Ashley Steele from Little Rock. Ashley, welcome to the show Driven by Doing.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So Ashley, now you're currently working at Apptegy in Little Rock and you have got so much experience in marketing and web development and definitely wanted to deep dive into your story, how you got started. And tell us a little bit about yourself and where did your story began here in the US?
Well, I actually started my career in Los Angeles in the magazine industry. I started actually as an editorial intern and then worked into editorial and art direction roles. It was a fashion, entertainment, lifestyle magazine. We had publications in multiple locations all over the United States, but we're a free publication and made a lot of our money just from ads, but then had to figure out how to shift when print subscriptions started to not do so well.
Wow, so you started in the magazine industry and then you slowly transitioned from your design career into digital side of things. Tell me a little bit about how you made the transition and what was going through your mind to make the transition. And because somebody who is from the design area and who is trying to almost getting into a new career in the digital space, how was that transition happen for you in your case?
Yeah, I think hindsight, or looking back, it looks like, and it was a career choice, move, but at the time, it didn't feel that way to me. It was more just, how do I make this work? How do I continue doing what I love? And at the time, I was really invested in magazine and in that industry. And so trying to figure out, okay, magazine and subscriptions people are not paying for these things any longer. How do we create a digital model? And how do I apply the love of layout design into that format? So I had a friend who actually was a programmer at the time, and he introduced me to WordPress, and he told me this is a great platform for you to use. I think you can translate it into something that works for you. And I just fell in love with it. I've always been a left-right brain person. I'm creative, but I also love data and analytics. I've always been very much into technology, taking things apart, putting them back together. And that was the perfect balance for me. I was able to learn a technology and understand the ins and outs, while also applying the creative side and ending up with, in the end, a better product, a better solution.
So you took that opportunity to learn from a friend to get into the WordPress. That's the content management system that you got hands on. And now you saw an opportunity where businesses are starting to use WordPress, but they don't know how to update them and a lot of things that goes into WordPress. And then now you created your own company to actually help these businesses. Walk us through those steps, because sometimes it might be very difficult to get things off the ground. And how did you get your first customers?
Absolutely. Well, I think, there's a lot of different scenarios that can apply to when you decide to make a transition like that, start your own business. I will say that it is always helpful if you can have some type of a side gig, either to leverage, to continue working both things. You got to hustle a little bit, and you're going to have to keep hustling as an entrepreneur. Or, if you've saved your money and you're planning for it, of course, or maybe a combo of those two things, but having some leverage to make those first steps. And there's risk involved. You have to believe that you have something to offer is part of it. But I also think it's important to always do research first and look and see if you have an idea that you do feel compelled to do and that you think is going to offer value. Do some research and see, hey, is anyone else doing this out there? And if they are, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but how do you learn from what they're doing? Where can you find any places that they maybe aren't fulfilling that you see a need for? Or things that they're doing really well. How do you take that and be inspired by and make it your own? But the first steps is, I think, you're doing research, making sure that you've got some financial support to do it. If it even comes from yourself and your own hustle. And I think having a network of people that you can relate to and ask questions, um, I think it's really important to get honest, critical feedback, people who are going to really be honest with you and not just tell you that you're wonderful, which is nice too, but to have someone who's going to really tell you what you need to hear and give you constructive criticism, because they're just trying, they're just to make you better. And I think if you can do that and you just don't give up, you're not going to probably be successful the very first time, but if you keep trying and learn from those mistakes, you're going to find something that works for you.
So you started off your side gig to help these businesses, and what happened next? Like, you also were looking for other opportunities to work as a full-time employee somewhere. Like, how did that go for you?
Well, so I ended up starting at the time Denver Web Gal, which was a WordPress training company. I just had found through working with other startups that were marketing focused how many clients really did not know how to make basic updates for themselves, or so they wanted to be empowered, or they wanted someone more personal to help them and kind of do a mix where they could do part of it themselves and then hire someone to either build out the site or help continue their marketing efforts. And from there, I did that for several years, and part of it was just missing working with a team, but I also had made really great connections prior to this who reached out to me, and when they needed help developing the digital marketing side of their business at a purely video production company, it just seemed like a natural transition, a great opportunity. I was able to continue doing some of the things I built at my consulting business and apply them in a startup environment that was really exciting, and collaborating with people that was, again, another technology. Video was becoming more and more important. This was, again, around 2013. So video was becoming much more prominent at that point.
So you started working at that company, and how long have you worked there? I think for a couple of years.
Yes, I was there for about 3 years, a little over 3 years. And when I first started, they didn't have very many digital marketing services. They were selling $500 websites. And I was able to come in and build out their team, starting with 2 people to building it up to over 12. We also ended up selling websites at $25,000 and upwards at that time, and building out basically other services like an SEO product that we ended up terming digital reach optimization instead of SEO. So that was a really fun project to be a part of, a company to be a part of. I learned a ton from that. They ended up making me their VP of operations, because I also ended up building out their contract management software, all of our processes, helping to build out a sales team, and serving them within each of our marketing services as kind of the head person. So talk about multiple hats. That definitely was that, but I learned so much from being a part of that team.
And then from there, you moved to Little Rock. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah, and like I was telling you earlier, this is kind of the sad part of my story. But I had my mom was really sick at the time, and so I was starting to come back to visit with her. And in that time, we were looking at moving away from Denver anyway, just because we were looking for another place that had that in between, that hadn't quite hit its peak yet, but had opportunity. So we were looking at Eugene, Oregon, and some places in the Carolinas, and we found that a lot of these places were already they were already the cool place to be. And Little Rock had so many qualities that we were looking for as far as culture and the opportunity that existed. People were really trying to change what Little Rock means, and I think they still are. So it's been a great move. And this was also really different, was coming from the startup world and then ending up working for traditional marketing agencies that have been around for 30 plus years. They came from that traditional kind of print, like kind of where I started, full circle, which is ironic, but but they were looking for people to do they knew that they had to keep evolving and involve digital marketing services. So it was a really nice blend of basically up what had led me up to that point. But I had access to working on very established accounts and oftentimes national and sometimes even international accounts that had quite a bit at stake. So really great challenge in that way of having to not only earn trust within the agency, but also to develop that with clients and find a way to bring that expertise to a very established community. Oftentimes these accounts they had for over 10 years sometimes. So again, always a really good challenge.
So there again, like you transition into the more traditional marketing agency, and you have used all your previous experience working for digital, the startups, and your experience in magazines that really helped you to transition. And then you are currently now working at a startup again in Little Rock. Again, that was a transition back to startup. So there are a lot of great experiences that you had in your whole experience. So what would you tell somebody who is coming out of college, because we see a lot of people coming out of college looking for opportunities, and unfortunately there are not a lot of openings. What would you tell people who are looking for opportunities right now in the market, Ashley?
Ah, such a great question. I think it's important that you are open to things outside of your comfort zone and that you're willing to put in the work. And I don't even mean that in know your value. I think it's important not to there's a common thing, especially in marketing at least, that people are told, oh, well, just do this for free so that you get it on your your portfolio. And there is something to be said for doing some of that, but I guess the balance is like, be willing to give, and sometimes that is a free thing, or it's just saying I will do this for you and show you my value, but also know what your worth is too, and what point you need to stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself in that. But I think if you're always open to opportunities and you're open to helping people, that is going to open up so many doors for you. You will have an opportunity to do things that you may not have even thought of for yourself. And I think if you're always curious and willing to have a conversation and see what that might be about, it's going to serve you well. I think the other piece is just not limiting yourself to what you may have gone to school for, or what you think is maybe what your parents or yourself or your friends have always told you that this is what you're going to go do. Be open to change. Like, it may not look exactly the way you thought it would, or what, again, like maybe it's not your actual degree. I know very few people that have jobs that are exactly what their degree was for in college. So just keep that in mind. It's not a bad thing to have something different. It doesn't mean that you failed or that you didn't do a good job with your schooling. That schooling led you to this point. Or if it's not school, maybe it's an apprenticeship or an internship, or prior work somewhere else. Even if you went a non-traditional route, there's probably other opportunities that you don't realize.
That's a great insight, Ashley, because we see a lot of students from different majors getting into digital marketing because they learn something about digital marketing, or because a lot of especially youngsters, we are on social media trying to post things, but we are also seeing a lot of ads that somebody else is targeting on us, right? So this which we are already familiar with. And I was actually talking on another interview recently, and digital marketing is something that anybody can actually jump into to kind of get their hands dirty with a minimum investment. And sometimes we see a lot of courses that are already available on the internet where students can actually leverage to learn more about these technologies, because again we talked a little bit about technologies keep on changing, and embracing how these are changing, it's super important, especially given the digital age that we are in. And if you look at past 6 months, even after COVID-19, how the world has shifted into a virtual world. And we also talked about how it doesn't matter where you are in the world, and we see things keep changing every now and then. And in fact, the pace at which we are going right now is in fact nobody have actually thought of last year. And people, especially coming out of colleges right now, might be thinking, hey, like, no, the world has changed, in fact, in so many different ways that I could not have imagined 4 years ago when I was getting a degree in this major. Because we are also seeing, like, no, people talking about student debt, and like a lot of pressure is already on their the minds, and getting out of college during, especially during this time, is an additional pressure on top of the existing things. So what would you tell people who are, again, thinking about getting into marketing, or especially working in startups, right? Because this might be a great opportunity to kind of, you know, test different things. And startups are one of the ways where they can have hands-on several things, right? That's exactly what you said, that helped you to kind of like learn so many different things. So what would you tell people who are trying to see their way in startups, or even at least start a business? How can they get started?
Well, I think it's really important to stay up to date on what is trending. And it's easier than you think to do that. I mean, one of the things I always like to share with my teams is to create a Feedly account, and that's just one tool. It's free. Feedly allows you to pull in different feeds based off of topics. So you can sort through it. It comes from all different news sources across the internet, blogs, actual publications, they're all in there, and you can custom craft each channel. And then I personally like to check it at least once a week, sometimes a couple times, and skim through and look at what's happening right now. What are the new technologies? For marketing specifically, I always like to have a general marketing kind of branding channel, and then I like to have an SEO channel, a social media channel, an inbound, and a paid. And I am always, I love that there's always something new. And if you enjoy constant learning, if you like things to be different and exciting, it's a great field for you. I think startups and marketing, or marketing startups, provide that to anyone who enjoys a constant challenge and change. I will say, if you don't like change, these may not be great fits for you, but I'm sure there are other things out there that would be. Um, but I think the other piece is, know what you really enjoy. Try to really hone in, maybe even just take a piece of paper and write it down. Like, start listing out the things that you like to do. And don't think of it maybe even as work, but just the stuff that you enjoy. And then maybe you can then ask yourself, well, which things am I really good at? And maybe ask some of your peers, if you have a mentor, what do you think I'm good at? What do you think my strengths are? And start there. If you really enjoy social media, then go look and see, well, what opportunities are there at these startups, or how can I leverage it to start my own thing? But I think if you can start to craft your story and your resume around the things that you enjoy and are good at, and then try to go seek out those types of opportunities, they do come about. I think that really has happened for me in each of these instances. It was just looking at how can I use this one aspect, or what am I curious about, and then meeting people who are like, hey, we've got this opportunity, you might really like this, and then that just evolves from there.
So I think you brought a great points there, Ashley, and it is very important to even spend a lot of time on networking. And sometimes it can be very daunting, especially now in the virtual way. That sometimes it becomes much more easier, but taking that first step can be very difficult sometimes, because we have got some great tools like LinkedIn, and we see a lot of people taking advantage and connecting with people and learning from other people. So for students, especially at that stage, it can be overwhelming too, because there are a ton of things that they can do. But what can they leverage, especially given um, the different things that we have hands on. And thanks for sharing that great tool, Feedly, to kind of like, really understand what are those different areas that they might be interested in, and also learning about the latest trends and technologies that are changing. So how can people leverage LinkedIn? Because especially like, you leverage LinkedIn to kind of like, connect and network and like see what are those opportunities out there. How can people get started, especially on LinkedIn side of things, to leverage these tools?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, I think, is a really great tool just because it's been established at this point, and you will find a range of people that you can connect with. One of the things I'm finding, and how you and I kind of got connected in a way, was realizing that, especially now, as our world has changed after COVID, it's hard to, if you just have a resume or a piece of paper, it's hard to really tell who a person is based off of that. And we all have these devices on us all the time. So why not use them? We're already comfortable with them. And just film a video of yourself, explaining, a little bit about who you are and what your strengths are, maybe give some background. Anything to show your personality and your strengths, I think, can be a great start. That's just one thing I have found helpful to do beyond just the text on the page. The other thing that might be helpful, I think back when I first started to learn how to do more networking, and I'm an introvert naturally, so this was something I really had to learn, and I continue to push my boundaries in. But and I love people. It's just sometimes those connections are hard. And I remember early on trying to figure out how do I do this? I know I need to network. And there was actually opportunities in Denver. I looked, meetup.com was a new thing, but I was able to find actual networking groups that were specific to the creative industry, and joined a group called Makers and Thinkers in Denver and started to attend their groups. They'd have happy hours and people would do pitches, and you could start to learn and meet other people. Now, all that being said, now with COVID, it's a little trickier to do those types of events, but I think still places like Meetup or even on Facebook to have these private groups that are topical. I think you can join a group that you're interested in and start to network through some of those more private groups as well. And there's still community resources. There's normally things that are put on in your own city. I know here in Little Rock, we have a small business association that helps connect and offer some training or skill sets to people. So just do some research and see what things might be a good fit for you. And you can start with something, if you're an introvert like me, you can start with something that doesn't feel as big and scary, and just do something that is within your comfort zone and go from there.
Thanks, Ashley, because that is something that was super fascinating, because sharing something more than the text, right? So video is something that now people are even getting more comfortable, because we cannot just run away from video anymore, because we have seen how Zoom has taken over the world, and we are spending a lot more time than in Zoom than actually in person nowadays, especially with everything how the world has changed in the last 6 months. And I really liked the video, how you shared on LinkedIn, the kind of opportunities that you're looking for to kind of show your personality, because sometimes people are uncomfortable. People are uncomfortable to put it out there, because people think, hey, what would people think? Or there's almost all these questions that goes through our head, because sometimes that is one thing that I learned for the past couple of years is I used to feel very uncomfortable, and I started sharing my videos on LinkedIn saying that, hey, this is what I learned, or this is something that I really wish I knew, because I kind of solved this problem after learning so and so. But over the years, I started realizing people don't really care about the things that you pay, because nobody has a lot of time, because we keep asking those so many questions for ourselves, and I agree, sometimes it can go against us as well, because there is a lot of bullying, especially on the social media, and especially there's a lot of negativity that is always there. But I think sometimes we just need to get comfortable with those things as well, because taking some things personally might really get hurt. I mean, can hurt us as well. But we are doing that for a purpose, right? So we are putting ourselves out there, trying to share some good things that you learned in your own experience to try to help other people. And that's exactly why I started this podcast, is to really share stories of people who are doing great things and embracing all the changes, and to just really learn about all these untold stories, because I feel that everybody has so many great stories that most of us need to learn from each other. And sometimes it's just obvious that everybody has stories, but sometimes just conveying that in a way that people can actually take those lessons so that they can learn from them and also apply whatever they're listening to. I think you have got a great story. And do you have anything else for our listeners to take away from our conversation today?
I think that you just said it all. Really is the perfect piece, is that we all have stories. And I think it's that, I don't know about you, but I always thought that there were certain ways to go about things. I thought how I was taught that there were certain paths that you had to follow or steps you had to take in order to accomplish certain objectives in your life. And I think that if we do share our stories more often, you will find that no one's story goes in a perfect line. And the steps weren't always outlined clearly for them. It was just about uh, how they chose to deal with the current situation and where they learned or where they pivoted. And I think that that's absolutely true. And it's not, um, I think sometimes the most interesting and sometimes most successful people are the ones that you would never guess their story. It's just crazy how they ended up where they did, but they believed in themselves and they just kept going. So thanks for the opportunity to share on this.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed just talking to you and learning more about your background, and also just sharing those insights that what you had to go through. Because as you just mentioned now, none of our stories are in a straight line. If it is a straight line, definitely that's not a life, right? So we think that it's a straight line, but it never would be the case. So thanks for sharing your story and journey with us, Ashley. And I wish you all the very best for your future endeavors. And thanks again for coming on to the show. You are truly driven by doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.